Marisol Reyes woke slowly to the soft hum of the life support system aboard the Astronova, her eyelids fluttering against the pale glow of the overhead lights. For a moment, she thought she felt something warm tracing along her forearm, and, when she lifted her hand into view, her breath caught. Strange silver-blue symbols danced across her skin, curving and spiraling as though they were alive. They pulsed gently, sending a faint tingle through her nerves. Panic fluttered in her chest, but she pressed a trembling hand over the glyphs, reminding herself that she was a scientist. Trained to observe before leaping to conclusions, she swung her legs over the edge of the narrow bunk and swung herself to standing. The narrow cabin felt smaller now, the walls closing in as every thought raced through her mind. Had she brushed against some alien spores in the lab yesterday? Is this some kind of allergic reaction? She swallowed hard, her throat dry, and reached for her uniform sleeve. As she pulled the fabric down, the symbols split apart. Butterflies of glowing light drifting down her arm before reforming into new patterns near her wrist. Every cell in her body seemed to vibrate with a strange energy. Marisol steadied her breathing. She could not let fear control her. With careful fingers, she covered the glyphs and moved toward the small wash basin, splashing cool water on her face. She studied her reflection-pale skin, dark hair tied back in a loose braid, eyes wide with wonder and a touch of dread. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. You've seen stranger things on Lyra 3. As a xenobiologist, she had catalogued plants that glowed in moonlight, insects that sang in vibrating harmonies, and fungi that healed wounds, but never anything that marked her own body. By the time she reached the hatch, the corridor beyond was quiet. The other scientists and technicians were already at work in the greenhouse and the genetics lab. She dragged a steadying breath and slipped inside the laboratory, where rows of bioluminescent plants arced like living chandeliers. The room smelled of damp soil and chemicals, and the low hum of hydroponic pumps created a soothing backdrop. She forced a small smile at her colleagues. "Morning, everyone," she greeted, her voice steadier than she felt. Dr. Harlan looked up from a cluster of violet leaf specimens. "Morning, Marisol. You look awake." He raised an eyebrow. She wondered if he suspected anything. To her workstation and set down her datapad, careful not to knock her sleeve loose. "Just another restless night," she replied. She reached for a scanner and began logging the growth rate of a newly engineered moss. As she waved the device over the leaves, she felt a subtle warmth in her arm, as if the glyphs were reacting to her actions. The scanner beeped, and data filled the screen. The moss was thriving at twice its expected rate. Her heart fluttered again. She glanced surreptitiously at her covered forearm and realized the glyphs were not just decorative, they were communicating. Every new flourish coincided with a change in the plant's behavior. Her pulse quickened with excitement. Humanity had long sought to unlock the secrets of Lyra 3's astonishing life forms, but this felt like a bridge between human curiosity and alien wisdom. Marisol swallowed another breath and straightened. She would not run from what was happening. Instead, she would embrace it. If these symbols were a gift or a challenge from some unknown source, she would meet it with the same determination that had driven her to leave Earth for a life among the stars. She tapped her datapad and began recording every detail: the glyph's shape, the way they glowed, the rhythm of their pulses. Outside the lab's reinforced window, pale rings of Lyra 3 shimmered against a star-dotted sky. Marisol pressed her palm to the glass, feeling the glyph's warmth spread through her veins. Somewhere beyond those rings, an ancient mystery awaited. And as fear gave way to wonder, she knew she was the first step in revealing a new chapter of human and alien. Kinship one written across her very skin. Marisol returned to her cabin as the twin suns of Lyra 3 dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft pink and violet. Her heart pounded as she crossed the threshold. Every step felt heavy with anticipation when she activated the room's holoprojector, hoping to review her lab notes. The air shimmered on. There stood a figure more graceful than any human she had ever seen. The figure wore flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight. Her skin glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Two slender crowns of light hovered above her temples. Marisol recognized the face instantly. The alien princess Azria, heir of the Elisari sovereignty. The princess's emerald eyes held kindness, but also an ancient power that made Marisol's breath catch. "Do not be afraid, Azria," said in a soft voice that felt like music. "I am here to guide you." At those words, Marisol felt a gentle warmth spread from her forearm to her chest. The glyphs under her sleeve pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She swallowed and nodded. Barely trusting her voice, Azria stepped closer in the projection, and Marisol could see the delicate silver symbols tattooed on the princess's own skin. "These symbols chose you," the princess explained. "They are part of an Elisari rite to unite our strengths. Through you, we will learn from one another." Marisol's pulse quickened. She had imagined meeting aliens as a distant possibility. Now, one spoke to her personally. "What do I need to do?" Marisol asked, her voice trembling. Eyes glowed brighter as she extended a slender hand. "Learn, feel, trust. The glyphs will guide you in the days ahead." As she spoke, tiny motes of light drifted from the projection and seemed to join the symbols on Marisol's arm. A gentle tingle chased away Marisol's fear. Marisol sat on the edge of her bunk and watched as the princess outlined the process. First, she would gain insight into Lyra III's living world. Then, she would transform that insight into action healing broken ecosystems, locking new ways to grow food, and teaching both species how to thrive together. Each promise felt like a warm promise of hope. When Azria finished, the projection faded as quietly as a sigh. Sat alone in the dim room, her mind racing with questions and wonder. The glyphs still pulsed softly, as if reminding her that she was not alone. She pressed her palm against the soft bed linens and closed her eyes. Fear still lingered at the edges of her thoughts, but excitement bloomed in her chest. She rose and walked to her workstation where her datapad lay open. Her fingers trembled slightly as they tapped the screen. She began to write. Met with Princess Azria. Symbols are part of an ancient rite. Instructions. Observe. Learn. Trust the glyphs. With each word, her confidence grew. This was no hallucination or mistake. This was her new reality. Later, Marisol tucked herself under the covers and watched the glow of Lyra III's rings through the viewport. She felt the soft pulse of the glyphs as a lullaby of possibility. Tomorrow, she would wake and face the transformation head-on. Whispered into the darkness, I will learn your secrets. I will honor this gift. As sleep claimed her, she dreamed of silver symbols shining like stars, across her skin and of a future where humanity and the Elisari stood together as sisters. Marisol woke before dawn, the glyphs on her forearm glowing softly in the pale light of her cabin. She felt a quiet strength ripple through her as she dressed in her field gear. Today she would test the first lesson from Princess Azria. She paced the narrow room for a moment, chest tight with excitement and nerves, then took a deep breath and stepped into the corridor. In the greenhouse, rows of bioluminescent plants arced like gentle lanterns. Dew dripped from broad leaves, and the air smelled sweet with life. Marisol approached the moss trials petri dishes, filled with engineered moss strains that struggled to grow under Earth-standard conditions. She lifted her sleeve, revealing the glyphs as they pulsed in soft blues and greens. The symbols felt warm against her skin, as though they welcomed her touch. She placed a careful hand over the largest dish. At first, nothing happened. Then the moss's edges began to brighten, threads unfurling like tiny green dancers stretching into the light. Marisol's breath caught. She watched the moss spread across the petri dish, covering it in a lush carpet within moments. The scanner at her side beeped with unexpected growth readings, far higher than any control sample. Dr. Harlan looked up from his workstation, eyes wide. Marisol, what did you do? He asked, stepping closer. His voice held wonder, not alarm. Marisol felt pride bloom in her chest. I don't know exactly, she said softly, but the glyphs, they guided me, added me. She showed him the glowing patterns. As Harlan reached out, a small tendril of moss in his hand perked up its leaves. Opening like a flower greeting the sun, a small group of technicians gathered, their faces lit by the gentle glow of the plants and the glyphs. They whispered in amazement. Marisol felt warmth at the edges of her lips. She was a scientist, yes, but this was more than data and experiments. It was proof that two species could share knowledge across worlds. She scribbled notes on her datapad, but her heart was full of hope. Later, Marisol followed the greenhouse walkway into the main biolab, where rare insects thrived in mesh enclosures. She paused before a cage of luminous winged creatures whose chirping calls echoed softly. Their numbers had dwindled due to habitat shifts on Lyra 3. She rolled up her sleeve again.
Ow.
The glyphs glowed steadily as she placed her hand near the mesh. The insects stilled in mid-flight, then began to flutter gently around her fingers, as if guided by an unseen current. One tiny creature landed on her knuckle. Marisol held perfectly still, heart pounding with joy. The insect's wings vibrated. In a soft glow, she felt tears pinch at the corner of her eyes, tears of wonder, of gratitude for this connection. The technicians watched silently, their usual chatter replaced by respectful awe. Marisol realized that in this moment, humanity's drive to understand and empathize had bridged the gap between starborn worlds. After the demonstrations, Marisol retreated to her cabin for a moment of quiet. She pressed her palm to her arm, feeling the gentle pulse of the glyphs. She whispered, "Thank you." The symbols flickered, as if in reply. She opened her datapad and replayed the recordings. The moss's rapid growth, the insect's calm landing, the astonished faces of her colleagues. Each scene was proof that fear could give way to wonder, and that kindness could open doors to new possibilities. As the twin suns rose over Lyra 3's horizon, Marisol stood by the viewport in the common room. Colonists and scientists bustled below, ready for the day's tasks. She felt the glyphs hum beneath her uniform sleeve, a constant reminder of the journey ahead. Her heart swelled with determination. Yesterday she was afraid. Today she was a bridge between worlds. Tomorrow she would learn even more. Marisol smiled softly. The transformation was already changing her life and the lives of everyone around her. With each gentle glow of her skin, she carried the promise of a future where humanity and the Elisari could heal, grow, and stand together under the same sky. And in that promise lay the true wonder of her gift. Marisol strapped on her field pack before dawn, the glyphs on her forearm glowing softly beneath her uniform. She felt a steady warmth in her veins as she joined the small team of engineers and biologists assembling at the landing pad. The glass dome of the colony, Lyra 3's polar forests, lay in quiet shadow, their tall crystal trees swaying under the weight of shifting ground. Marisol's heart beat fast with both excitement and concern. The transport shuttle touched down near the edge of a great grove, where seismic tremors had cracked the ground and splintered tree roots. Engineers in pale suits, adjusted sensors, and carefully marked unstable areas with glowing beacons. Marisol stood apart for a moment, pressing her palm to the soft sleeve covering the glyphs. She breathed in the crisp air and felt the symbols pulse, as if calling her toward the wounded forest. She stepped forward into the grove, each footfall sending a soft echo through the root-cracked soil. The trees here were taller than any on Earth, their trunks transparent and filled with bioluminescent sap that pulsed gently with life. But many were bent or broken, their crystal branches torn by tremors. Marisol's eyes filled with gentle sorrow. This forest was home to so many creatures and it needed help. Standing before a giant split trunk, she rolled up her sleeve. Glyphs shone brighter, casting soft blue-green light across the damaged bark. Marisol placed both hands on the tree's base. At first, nothing happened, but she closed her eyes and listened to the rhythm of the glyphs. She felt them guiding, her energy outward like a breeze pushing against broken wood. Slowly, the cracks in the trunk began to narrow. Crystal fibers knit together under the soft glow, weaving a lattice of healing light. Marisol's breath caught as the tree straightened itself, its branches lifting toward the sky. Around her, the sap's glow brightened, and tiny motes of light drifted upward like fireflies. Engineers watched in astonishment, cameras clicking as proof of the living restoration, as the first tree healed. Marisol moved on to a line of smaller saplings uprooted by the ground's shift. She knelt and pressed her glyphlet hand into the earth beside each one. The soil trembled under her touch, then settled into place, cradling the roots gently. Tiny green shoots sprouted where broken branches once lay. Marisol felt tears sting. Her eyes stares of joy at the forest's quiet resilience, and at her part in its survival. Suddenly, a distress beacon sounded. A patrol team reported that a group of colonists, surveying a nearby glacial ridge, had been trapped when a fissure opened in the ice. Marisol's chest tightened. Without hesitation, she followed the shuttle's route with the rescue party. Her glyphs pulsed rapidly, guiding her through the grove's edge and onto the icy plain beyond. The rescuers found the colonists huddled on a narrow ice ledge, their faces pale and frightened. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and jagged cracks crisscrossed the ice around them. Marisol raised her arm and let the glyph shine like a beacon. A soft light arced across the fissure, solidifying into a glowing bridge of ice crystal that spanned the gap. One by one, the colonists crossed safely, their eyes wide with wonder and relief. When the last person stepped over, the glyph bridge dissolved into twinkling motes that drifted into the sky. The colonists rushed forward to thank Marisol, their hands clasping hers. She smiled, heartful. "We are stronger together," she whispered, thinking of both humans and Elisari as the rescue shuttle lifted them back toward the colony. Marisol gazed out at the healed forest and the gleaming ice plain. The glyphs on her skin pulsed in gentle rhythm with her heartbeat. In that pulse, she felt the promise of unity, two species, one shared hope, bound by the gentle light dancing upon her arm. Marisol returned to the colony's central plaza as daylight washed over the biodome. Word of her forest and ice rescues had spread fast. A small crowd gathered around her workstation, curiosity and hope shining in their eyes. She felt her heart thrum with both pride and nervousness. She pulled back her sleeve slightly, letting the glyphs glow like a gentle promise. Dr. Harlan approached first, his usual calm replaced by awe. Only days ago he had watched moss bloom at Marisol's touch. Now he needed help himself. During a supply run, he had slipped on wet rock and badly twisted his ankle. His face was pale with pain. But when Marisol knelt beside him and placed her glowing hand over the injury, he let out a soft sigh. Within moments, his limp eased until it was gone. Gasps and whispers rippled through the gathering. Technicians and engineers watched Marisol's calm focus. She closed her eyes and let the glyphs pulse warmth into Harlan's leg. Tiny ripples of light drifted from her hand, and the swollen skin smoothed. When she removed her hand, Harlan flexed his foot and stood, tears of relief in his eyes. He bowed his head in thanks, and Marisol smiled gently. Not everyone was quick to celebrate. A small group of colony council members stood at the fringe, their arms crossed. One counselor stepped forward, her voice cool. "Marisol," she said, "we respect your work, but we must be cautious. These powers are mysterious." Marisol met the counselor's eyes. She understood the worry. No one wanted danger in this fragile new world. Marisol took a steady breath. She knew fear often came from the unknown. "I felt afraid too," she said in a clear, calm voice. "The glyphs have guided me to help our people in this world." She held out her arm, letting the symbols shine fully. "Look at what we can do when we trust kindness and curiosity." The glyphs pulsed in time with her words, casting shifting patterns of light across the plaza. A hush fell. Children peered. From behind their parents, faces lit with wonder. A botanist stepped forward next, bringing wilted saplings from the plaza gardens. Marisol placed her hand over the dry soil, and the plants lifted their drooping leaves toward the sunlit dome. The crowd cheered as tiny green shoots burst from the earth, proof that her gift was real and gentle. Later, Marisol retreated to the common room, her heart still racing from the day's emotions. She pressed her palm to the soft fabric covering. The glyphs, they glowed steadily as if smiling back at her. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the day's pride, anxiety, and joy. Each feeling was a strand in the tapestry of her transformation. When evening fell, the colony held an informal gathering under the dome's tranquil blue light. Lanterns floated above tables laden with fresh food grown in her guided gardens. Marisol stood beside Azria's hollow projection, projected at half size so the princess could join in. The projection's eyes crinkled in gentle pride. Marisol raised her cup of jasmine tea and offered a quiet toast. To unity, she said, her voice soft but strong. To hope. To the strength we find when we trust one another. The crowd raised their glasses in unison. Even the counselor who had questioned her nodded, her expression warm. Marisol felt the true power of her gift. Not just healing forests or people, but healing doubt and fear. As the lanterns drifted overhead, Marisol caught the soft glow of the glyphs beneath her sleeve. She knew more challenges lay ahead, but she also knew she would never face them alone. With each pulse of light, she carried humanity's best qualities: curiosity, compassion, and courage. And with that gift shining on her skin, she felt ready for whatever came next. Marisol stood in the Grand Council Hall, her heart fluttering like a hummingbird's wings. The room was vast, with tall crystal pillars that caught the light and cast rainbows across the polished floor. Human governors sat on one side, dressed in sharp uniforms of deep blue and silver. On the opposite side, the Elisari envoy glowed softly in robes of starlight and pearl. Marisol pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the gentle pulse of the glyphs beneath her sleeve. When the chamber fell silent, Governor Linwood rose and spoke with measured calm. He welcomed the Elisari and praised the healing of Laruthri's forests. His voice carried respect, but also a hint of caution. Marisol listened. She had worked beside humans and aliens alike, and she knew that true partnership required trust, not just words. At the governor's nod, Azria stepped forward, her silver symbols matching Marisol's own. The princess spoke of ancient hopes and shared dreams, her voice like wind among leaves. She spoke of an age when their worlds lay apart, and of this new era of unity. The hall brightened with her words, but still the humans watched carefully. Marisol felt a quiet strength well up inside her. She straightened her spine and looked at the assembly. Then she stepped onto the marble dais, every eye turning to her. Her uniform felt soft against her skin, and her glyphs shone like living art across her forearm. She raised her hand and let its glow fill the hall. "Friends of Earth, friends of the Elisari," she began, voice clear and steady. "We have shared fear. We have shared hope. Today we share knowledge and life itself." Her words rang out, simple but true. She paused, letting the light from her glyphs wash over the crowd in gentle waves. She spoke of the moss that had bloomed under her touch, of the forest that had healed, and of the colonists rescued from the ice. She told how humans had shown kindness, and how the Elisari had shared their bioluminescent gifts. With each story, her confidence grew, and her audience leaned forward. Marisol glanced at Azria's projection, seeing the princess nod in encouragement. She continued, "When we trust each other, we become stronger than we ever were alone. We can feed the hungry forests, we can heal broken bodies, we can light the darkest paths." A soft murmur of agreement rose among the humans and Elisari alike. One council member, known for her strict caution, looked moved. Her stern features softened as she watched the glow of the glyphs and heard Marisol's words. Children seated in the front row leaned close to their parents, their eyes wide with wonder at the living light dancing on Marisol's skin. As Marisol spoke, the glyphs shifted in pattern and hue, reflecting her hope and the hall's growing warmth. She felt her pulse align with that of every listener, human and alien heart beating as one. Emotions braided together, pride, peace, wonder into a single golden thread. When she finished, Marisol held her breath. Then Governor Linwood rose again, a slow smile crossing his face. "Marisol Reyes has shown us a path forward," he said. "Let us walk it together." The hall erupted in gentle applause, hands clapping first one after another, then all at once. Tears pricked at Marisol's eyes. She bowed her head gratefully and felt Azri's projection extend a hand. In that moment, she was no longer just a scientist or a symbol. She was a bridge between worlds. Later, as the crowd filtered out into the twilight gardens beyond the hall, Marisol lingered on. The dais. She pressed her palm to the glowing glyphs and whispered, "Thank you." The symbols flared briefly, then settled into a steady glow as if in reply. Under the rising moons of Layer 3, Marisol felt a new purpose shine within her.
The transformation
Was more than skin deep. It was a promise of unity, a living tapestry of two species woven together by hope, compassion, and shared destiny. And as long as the glyphs glowed, she knew their story was only just beginning. Marisol stood at the edge of the colony's great plaza, dawn's soft light reflecting off the domed roof. Today was the final stage of her transformation, a ceremony to seal the bond between humanity and the Elisari. Her skin still bore the glyphs, now fading into a subtle, silver sheen that caught the morning rays like living starlight. She felt her heart flutter with excitement and a gentle tremor of nerves. Around her, humans and Elisari gathered in respectful silence, their faces full of hope. When the trumpet sounded, Azria appeared in her full ethereal form, her own skin marked with the ancient symbols. She approached Marisol and placed a slender hand on her shoulder. Marisol felt a rush of warmth spread through her, as if the stars themselves were singing inside her chest. The princess spoke in her musical voice, "Daughter of Earth and sister of Elisari, accept the final gift." Marisol bowed her head, tears of joy in her eyes. As Azria traced her fingertip along Marisol's arm, the fading glyphs erupted once more in a gentle glow. Marisol closed her eyes, remembering every moment of fear, wonder, and triumph she had felt. Each pulse of light carried a memory: the moss that bloomed, the forest that healed, the colonists rescued on the ice, and the unity she had spoken of in the council hall. She felt those memories weave into her very soul. When the light dimmed, the glyphs were gone, leaving only the delicate silver patterns that shimmered on her skin. Marisol flexed her fingers and felt a new strength in her bones. Eyes to see the crowd gasp, and then burst into gentle applause. Children ran forward to touch the silver lines, and elders nodded with pride. Even the most cautious council members smiled and wept quietly. Azira stepped forward and took Marisol's other hand. "The transformation is complete," she declared, her voice carrying across the plaza. "Let us journey together to our homeworld, to learn and to teach." Marisol felt the weight of responsibilities settle on her shoulders, but it felt good, a promise fulfilled. She smiled up at the princess and nodded, her silver sheen catching every ray of the rising sun. Together, Marisol and Azria turned toward the shuttle waiting beyond the plaza's gate. The assembled crowd followed in solemn procession, carrying lanterns that glowed with both human and Elisari light. As Marisol walked, she felt the soft breeze on her arms, as if the atmosphere itself welcomed her new form. Her heart swelled with gratitude for every friend she had made and every life she had touched before stepping aboard. Marisol paused and looked back at the colony she had helped save. She pressed her palm to her chest, where the last echo of the glyphs still pulsed like a heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered to both worlds she now belonged to. Then, with a final breath of the crisp Lyra 3 air, she walked forward into the shuttle beside Azria. As the ramp closed, the sun climbed higher, shining on a future born from unity, compassion, and the simple glow of silver symbols on human skin.